Good afternoon. UGA's Disability Resource Center is happy to share some time with you today. We hope to provide you information that will be useful to you as you plan your transition activities to your prospective colleges. As you can see from the slide, we will be discussing several topics that may provide insight into the transition process. There are many differences between high school and college. However, we will only capture a few. We also wanted to help your understanding of certain words that get used interchangeably, as well as a term you may have never used. But by the end of the presentation, we hope you will be able to understand its meaning and use two other words to describe it. Registering for services and preparing for the initial interview is a process you may currently be learning about, and we hope to expand your view. The topic of accessing services will speak to the importance of staying in contact with your coordinator, especially for the first year, who can help guide you as needed. Our last slide will provide some final thoughts for your consideration. So, let the presentation begin. Transitioning to college is a really exciting time. As with most transitions, the more you know what to anticipate ahead of time, the more you can prepare to ensure a smooth transition. One of the biggest differences between high school and college is that you are now responsible for yourself and your success. Today, we will highlight several differences as you prepare to attend college. In high school, class size ranges from roughly 25 to 30 students. In college, classes can range from 30 to 300 students depending on the college and the class. In high school, teachers are readily available. In college, students see faculty less and are encouraged to take advantage of office hours and communicate via email. There is no such thing as a dumb question, but there are lazy questions. Keep your syllabus in an easy-to-access location. Syllabi typically include comprehensive course info, like how to contact the instructor, the learning objectives, grading and attendance policies, etc., and sometimes even an assignment calendar. In high school, teachers know your accommodations and will follow through with them. In college, in order to be eligible for accommodations, students must self-identify with a disability services provider at their college. Additionally, students are responsible for making their professors aware of their accommodations to ensure they receive them.
Same amount. I would say that the only thing that is different is I had a choice as to how I would like my media to be read. I could have either had, here I can have it read by a human or a screen, and at my high school I was forced to use a screen reader, so the freedom has definitely contributed greatly to my success.
In high school, modifications can change the class requirements. In college, no accommodation or modification can alter core course requirements. This may mean that some accommodations or modifications that you were awarded in high school may not be appropriate in college, depending on what the requirements of the course are. In K through 12, students are protected by IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act accommodation plans, often referred to as IEPs or 504 plans, depending on the needs of the student. In college, accommodations are guided by the Americans with Disability Act and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. Eligibility for accommodations is determined based on the functional limitations of a documented disability. We will cover functional limitations in the next section. While these differences may appear overwhelming, Taking the time to learn more about what to anticipate as you prepare for college gives you the opportunity to be proactive. Thanks for joining the staff at the University of Georgia Disability Resource Center to learn more about the accommodation process in college. As you begin transitioning to post-secondary education, you will be hearing many terms that will be unfamiliar to you. In meeting with your college coordinators and advisors, do not hesitate to ask them to explain terms that you do not understand. As we go through this presentation, listen for such terms. If we miss describing one that is unfamiliar to you, please write it down and ask during the Skype portion of this presentation on Tuesday. In the next couple slides, we will be discussing two such terms. Functional limitations can be described as the cognitive and academic areas that significantly limits the student ability in certain areas of learning. Weaknesses and challenges have also been used to describe functional limitations. Each diagnosis will have its unique functional limitations, weaknesses, or challenges. It is important to understand your functional limitation so you can understand why you receive your specific accommodations. Let's look at some examples of functional limitations for a diagnosis of a reading disorder or dyslexia. Difficulty learning phonics, such as breaking words into smaller units. Processing written information very slowly. Rereading written information several times to understand the meaning, and or difficulty processing verbal or auditory information. An example, listening to a class lecture. Accommodations are modifications or adjustments to the tasks, environment, or to the way things are usually done that enable individuals with disabilities to have an equal opportunity to participate in an academic program. Your report from the psychologist, also known as documentation, should include recommended accommodations. The recommended accommodations are directly related to the functional limitations, weaknesses, or challenges. Let's use the example of the reading disorder or dyslexia from a previous slide. You can see from this slide that the accommodations match up with one or more than one functional limitation. So, the reason a student received the accommodation of extended time was directly related to processing information slowly. This would make sense. One needs more time to process the information. Another example that the student receives the accommodation for alternative text was due to the difficulty with the phonics, as well as processing information slowly. Again, it makes sense. The accommodation can assist the student more easily in keeping up with reading assignments to stay on track. So the accommodations and the functional limitation need to match up. By understanding your strengths, as well as your functional limitations, you will be able to better communicate with your disability coordinator, academic advisor, and faculty. You do not have to disclose your exact diagnosis, an example, dyslexia, to the faculty unless you choose to do so. By using such phrases as processing written or verbal information slowly, or difficulty processing verbal information quickly, assists your faculty and coordinator in better understanding your needs. If you need help in understanding and explaining these challenges, do not hesitate to ask your college disability coordinator to help you frame those challenges in your own words to make it easier for you to talk about. Students must self-identify with the College Disability Services Office in order to initiate the process to request accommodations. In this section, we will outline the typical procedures and timeline for ensuring a smooth transition.
Registration is a rather critical time, and and your brain needs to be fully focused on it. And it's scary and intimidating because it's a new place filled with new rules and new obligations. And as long as you put everything in its proper place and you ask a bunch of questions so that you're sure that you're doing it the correct way, then you will undoubtedly thrive in your new environment.
Okay.
Contact your prospective Disability Services DS office early to register for services. Our best advice is completing this process prior to you arriving on campus for the first day of classes. Registering this summer before fall classes gives the DS office and you time to make sure you have all your paperwork in place. If you wait until fall semester begins, the busiest time for most DS offices and students, then it could take up to several weeks to process documentation, especially if additional information is needed.
Disability Center coming into UGA, I found out about it, I'd say, in September of my freshman year. And so I got my documentation immediately from my doctor at home and got it in as quick as possible. And then I just would try to work with the Disability Center and get it as quick as you can, because really the resources here are so incredible that you want to get in it as quick as you can. So just getting it organized and getting it together, and then also asking questions if you're confused about anything. I think that the people here are so great and they want to help you. So just if you can answer, or if they can answer any questions, they're going to be happy to.
Check with your specific institution for instructions on how to register for DS services. Some schools have an online application that you can fill out, while others use paper forms. Usually, you need to submit some form of an application where you explain how your disability may impact you in the classroom. This is where understanding your functional limitations or challenges play an important part in the accommodation process. Along with the request for services application, you will also need to submit documentation, usually from a psychologist that states your diagnosis, as well as provides more information about the functional limitations, weaknesses, or challenges related to your disability. Each institution will have specific guidelines for what types of documentation they accept and how to submit the documentation to their disability office. Remember, completing this step well in advance of fall semester will help you get all the paperwork in place and be registered with the DS office to be approved for academic accommodations. Once your school's DS office receives your application and documentation, the person assigned to review the incoming applications will let you know if any additional information is needed. When the review process is complete, depending on your school, you will be assigned to a coordinator or a disability specialist. This may be done through email. Be sure to check your school's email regularly, as email is a primary means of communication. The next step would be to contact your assigned coordinator to schedule an intake meeting or initial interview to discuss appropriate accommodations. Remember, the goal is to have all paperwork and accommodations in place before your first day of class. Most institutions of higher education require an intake or initial interview before you can receive accommodations for your disability. The next few slides will help to explain some questions you may have about the initial interview. Benefits of this initial interview will help you and your coordinator get to know one another, so you will feel more comfortable contacting the coordinator if issues or problems arise during the semester. Disability accommodations are not one size fits all. For instance, if 3 students are diagnosed with dyslexia, the accommodations could be similar, but each may have accommodations that the other two do not receive. Another way to say it is this: no two students have the same strengths, weaknesses, and needs, even if they have the same disability. The intention of accommodations is to tailor the accommodations to what you need. By knowing more about you, the accommodations you have used in the past, and what you feel like you need to succeed in college, you and your coordinator can create an accommodations plan that works best for you. This interview typically takes 30 minutes to an hour. This is more of a conversation than an interview, so relax. Be honest in your responses so the coordinator has the opportunity to really understand your strengths as well as your challenges. At UGA's Disability Office, you have the right to decide who will be in your intake interview. If you would like your parents to accompany you and also have permission to talk with your coordinator, you can do that. If you want to receive accommodations without parental contact, you can do that also. Be sure to let the disability office know so they can give you the necessary parental release information forms. Remember, each institution may have their own policies in place about who can be present during the initial interview. So ask ahead of time if you would like your parent to attend.
Disability Center, coming into UGA, I found out about it, I'd say, in September of my freshman year. And so I got my documentation immediately from my doctor at home and got it in as quick as possible. And then I just would try to work with the Disability Center and get it as quick as you can, because really the resources here are so incredible that you want to get it in as quick as you can. So just getting it organized and getting it together, and then also asking questions if you're confused about anything. I think that the people here are so great and they want to help you. So just if you can answer, or if they can answer any questions, they're going to be happy to.
If you have not provided the office with documentation of your disability, you will want to bring this with you to the interview. Documentation requirements vary from school to school, but useful information may include a letter from the ACT or College Board listing your approved testing accommodations, a learning profile from your high school, and the report or documentation from your psychologist.
Come into your intake meeting, take deep breaths, realize that everybody here is going to help you. It's their job, and just tell your coordinator everything that you have and what accommodations you had in high school, and if they can be transferred over to college, then insist that they are, and then things will be much smoother for you in your ensuing college career.
During the initial interview, the disability coordinator who interviews you will ask you questions about your past accommodations in the classroom and on standardized tests. Your coordinator will also ask you questions about how your disability impacts you on tests, in the classroom, and when reading or studying. Answer these questions helps your coordinator to determine what accommodations will benefit you most. Your coordinator will listen to what you have to say, so be sure to ask questions. You may want to ask your coordinator what accommodations are typically used by a student with your disability. When they recommend accommodations for you, you should definitely ask how these accommodations work at the college level. For example, if you are approved to receive a note taker, do you request a note taker online, or do you ask your professor to help find one? If you receive audiobooks as an accommodation, when do you have to provide receipts of purchase to prove that you purchased a copy of the textbook? You will also want to know how often you should meet with your coordinator and what other resources exist on campus to help students. Your coordinator may be able to refer you to other offices that offer tutoring, help with essays, or assistance with reducing testing anxiety. Remember, disability services offices are happy to help you with whatever you may encounter. All you have to do is ask. In high school, you may have attended your accommodations meetings with a team of people, parents, teachers, administrators, but typically at the college level, it will be you and your coordinator who are working together on accommodations. This initially happens when you first register, but you may revisit accommodations with your coordinator as issues arise. For many students, this is a great opportunity to work on self-advocacy skills. For your first semester, it is best to meet with your coordinator before the start of the semester in order to make sure you understand how receiving accommodations at your college works, what is expected of you, and what are the coordinator and the professor's responsibilities. Remember, you can always get support from your coordinator to talk to your faculty if necessary. However, in post-secondary education, the process needs to begin with you and your faculty having the conversation first. Coordinators are there to support you in this process. Your college experience is all about you. Some students like to meet with their coordinator frequently, just to have someone to check in with, while others may just check in at the beginning and end of the semester. When we see successful students, the one thing we find most interesting is the relationship they have established with their coordinator. By this we mean, how often do students contact their coordinators? Students who set up regular meetings, for example, once or twice a month, especially to get started, usually do better than a student who only contacts the coordinator after the fact, for example, failing an exam. By meeting more often, students have the opportunity to share the good things that are happening, as well as the things that may be troubling to them. By sharing this relationship, it is much easier to remedy a problem or support the student because of that relationship.
I am a current second-year student here at the University of Georgia majoring in International Affairs, and I can definitively say that the DRC has been a vital asset in my success as a student here.
Final thoughts performing day-to-day. Contact your coordinator when you're not sure what next to do. Meet with your faculty and get to know each other. Talk to your coordinator about the different support systems on campus. Hopefully, this has given you some things to think about. Take some time to jot down any questions you may have. We will be back with you tomorrow over Skype and we'll be happy to answer any questions you have. See you then!